Lieutenant Commander Grace Mitchell had been out of the Navy for exactly 2 weeks, and she was already wondering if she'd made a mistake. After 14 years as a Navy SEAL, one of the first women to complete the program, she'd decided it was time to come home. Her father was sick, her mother needed help, and Grace was tired of war zones. She'd given the Navy everything, and now it was time to give something back to her family. But civilian life was harder than she'd expected. She felt restless, purposeless. She'd gone from leading missions that saved lives to helping her mother grocery shop and taking her father to doctor's appointments. Important work, yes, but it didn't fill the void that military service had left. To fill her days and earn some money while she figured out her next move, Grace had taken a temporary job as a server at the Lakeside Country Club in her hometown of Riverside, Connecticut. It was one of those exclusive establishments where membership cost more than most people made in a year, where old money mingled with new money, and where the staff were expected to be invisible unless needed. Grace was 36 years old, with shoulder-length brown hair she kept tied back, lean muscle hidden under the country club's white server uniform, and eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by wealth or status. The other servers were mostly college students or people working multiple jobs to make ends meet. They looked at Grace with curiosity. She was clearly older, clearly different, but she didn't talk about her past. On this particular Friday evening, the club was hosting a private dinner party for Richard Blackwell III, a real estate developer who'd made millions buying up properties and evicting long-term tenants to build luxury condos. He was in his 50s, overweight, with thinning hair he combed over carefully and an attitude that screamed entitlement. Grace had been assigned to serve his table, along with another server named Amy Chen. Amy was 22, working her way through community college, always cheerful despite the often rude behavior of the club's wealthy members. Table 12 is Blackwell's party, the floor manager told them. 8 guests, full service, wine pairing. He's a VIP member, so everything needs to be perfect. Got it, Grace said, her military training making her naturally organized and efficient. The evening started normally enough. Blackwell and his guests, a mix of business associates and their spouses, were loud and demanding, but nothing Grace couldn't handle. She'd dealt with far worse in her military career. But as the evening wore on and the wine flowed freely, Blackwell's behavior deteriorated. He became louder, more aggressive, making inappropriate jokes that made his guests uncomfortable. Grace noticed the other women at the table exchanging glances, their smiles becoming more forced. Then Blackwell turned his attention to Amy. It started with comments about her appearance. "You're a pretty little thing, aren't you? How much would it cost to get private service, if you know what I mean?" He laughed at his own joke. His guests shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Amy's smile remained professional, but Grace could see the tension in her shoulders. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" Amy asked politely, trying to redirect. "You can get me your phone number," Blackwell said, reaching out and grabbing Amy's wrist. "Come on, don't be shy. I tip very well for good service." Amy tried to pull her hand away. "Sir, please let go." "I'm just being friendly," Blackwell said, his grip tightening. "What's wrong with being friendly? You work in service, you're supposed to be nice to customers." Grace had been at the bar, getting wine for another table. She saw what was happening and moved immediately, her body operating on instincts honed by 14 years of training. She covered the distance in seconds, positioned herself between Blackwell and Amy. "Sir, you need to let her go," Grace said calmly but firmly. Blackwell looked up at her, his face red from wine and indignation. "Who the hell are you? I'm talking to her, not you. I'm her coworker, and I'm asking you to release her wrist. Now. Or what?" Blackwell sneered. "You'll complain to management. I own a quarter of this club, sweetheart. I can have you fired with one phone call." "Then make the call," Grace said, her voice level. "But first, let her go." Something in Grace's tone, the absolute lack of fear, the quiet authority, made Blackwell pause. But he was too drunk and too used to getting his way to back down. "You're fired. Both of you. Now get out of my sight before I have security throw you out." "You're harassing her," Grace said. "That's assault. You need to let go of her wrist before this becomes a legal problem." "A legal problem?" Blackwell laughed. "Do you know who I am? I have lawyers who eat people like you for breakfast. I have politicians in my pocket. I can do whatever I want, and there's nothing you can do about it." He yanked Amy closer, making her stumble. That was a mistake. Grace's hand moved faster than anyone could follow. She applied a precise pressure point technique to Blackwell's hand, not hard enough to injure, but painful enough to make him immediately release Amy's wrist. He yelped and pulled his hand back, cradling it. "What the hell?" he shouted. "She assaulted me. She attacked me." His guests were all staring now. The other diners in the restaurant had turned to watch. The floor manager came rushing over. "What's going on here?" the manager asked, his eyes darting nervously between Grace and Blackwell. "This woman attacked me," Blackwell said, his face purple now with rage and alcohol. "She grabbed my hand and hurt me. I want her arrested. Call the police." "Sir, he was physically restraining Amy," Grace said calmly. "He grabbed her wrist and wouldn't let go when she asked him to. I intervened to prevent further harassment." The manager looked torn. He clearly knew that Blackwell was in the wrong, but Blackwell was also a major club investor. "Mr. Blackwell, perhaps we should call the police," Blackwell roared. "Now. I want this woman arrested for assault." "Sir, I really don't think. Are you refusing to call the police?" Blackwell demanded. "Because if you are, I'll have your job too. Call them. Now." The manager, seeing no way out, pulled out his phone and dialed 911. Amy was crying now, overwhelmed and scared. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to Grace. "This is all my fault." "No, it's not," Grace said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You did nothing wrong." "She attacked me," Blackwell insisted to his guests. "You all saw it. She grabbed my hand and twisted it. That's assault. She's going to jail." Two of Blackwell's guests, the women, looked like they wanted to say something, but their husbands shot them warning looks. No one wanted to cross Richard Blackwell 3. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Two officers, a male officer named Patterson and a female officer named Rodriguez. They entered the restaurant and immediately approached the floor manager. "We got a call about an assault," Patterson said. "Over here," Blackwell said, waving them over. "This woman attacked me. She grabbed my hand and injured it. I want her arrested." Rodriguez looked at Grace, taking in her appearance, calm, composed, showing no signs of aggression. Then she looked at Blackwell, drunk, belligerent, defensive. "What happened here?" Rodriguez asked, directing the question to Grace. "This gentleman grabbed my coworker's wrist and wouldn't release her when she asked him to," Grace explained. "I intervened by applying minimal pressure to make him let go. He was physically restraining her against her will." "That's a lie," Blackwell shouted. "She attacked me. Look at my hand." He held up his hand, which showed no visible injury. Rodriguez turned to Amy. "Is what she said true? Did this man grab your wrist?" Amy nodded, still crying. "Yes. He grabbed me and wouldn't let go. Grace was just trying to help me." "She's lying," Blackwell said immediately. "They're both lying. They probably planned this to try to extort money from me. You know how these people are, always looking for a payday." Patterson frowned. "What do you mean, these people?" "Service workers," Blackwell said quickly, realizing his comment had sounded worse than he intended. "They're always trying to scam wealthy customers. This is clearly a setup. Rodriguez was writing in her notebook. Did anyone else witness what happened? Several of Blackwell's guests shifted uncomfortably. The two women looked like they wanted to speak, but again, their husbands stopped them with looks. They all saw her attack me, Blackwell said. Right? Tell them what you saw. One of the men cleared his throat. I saw the woman grab Richard's hand. But I didn't see what happened before that. Because nothing happened before that. Blackwell insisted. She just attacked me out of nowhere. Rodriguez turned to Grace. Do you have any prior training in self-defense or martial arts? Grace chose her words carefully. I have some training, yes. What kind of training? Grace met Rodriguez's eyes. Extensive training. 14 years worth. Something passed between them, a moment of recognition. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed slightly. Military? Navy. What did you do in the Navy? Grace hesitated. This was always the moment where things got complicated. Special operations. Patterson's eyes widened. You're a SEAL. I was, Grace confirmed. I'm retired now. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Patterson and Rodriguez exchanged glances. Blackwell, sensing he was losing control of the narrative, became more aggressive. I don't care if she was the president, he said. She assaulted me. I'm pressing charges. Arrest her. Rodriguez closed her notebook. Mr. Blackwell, based on what we've heard, it sounds like you physically restrained a staff member against her will. That's actually assault on your part. This woman intervened to stop that assault using minimal force. That's ridiculous. Blackwell sputtered. I was just being friendly. I barely touched her. Did you grab her wrist? Rodriguez asked Amy directly. Yes, Amy said quietly. And when I asked him to let go, he held on tighter. He said things that made me uncomfortable. Grace only helped me because I couldn't get away. This is unbelievable, Blackwell said. Do you know who I am? I have connections. I play golf with the mayor. I donate to the police benevolent fund. And you're taking the word of two waitresses over mine? We're taking the word of the person who was allegedly assaulted, Patterson said. And right now, that appears to be this young lady, not you. I want to speak to your supervisor, Blackwell demanded. Give me the name of your commanding officer. This is outrageous. You can file a complaint at the station, Rodriguez said. But based on what we've heard tonight, no arrest is going to be made. Ma'am, she turned to Grace, you're free to go. You might want to file a report yourself about the harassment of your coworker. You can't be serious. Blackwell shouted. I'm the victim here. Sir, you need to lower your voice, Patterson said firmly. You're causing a disturbance. A disturbance? A disturbance? Blackwell was fully red-faced now. I'll show you a disturbance. I'll have both your badges. I'll have this club shut down. I'll sue everyone in this room. Sir, if you continue yelling, we'll have to ask you to leave, Rodriguez said. I'm not leaving. I paid for this dinner. I'm a member here. The floor manager stepped forward nervously. Mr. Blackwell, perhaps it would be best if you settled your bill and continued this conversation elsewhere. Don't you tell me what to do. Blackwell turned on the manager. You're fired. Effective immediately. Sir, you can't actually fire me. Watch me. I own a quarter of this club. I can fire anyone I want. This went on for another 10 minutes, Blackwell raging, threatening lawsuits, demanding arrests, while his increasingly uncomfortable guests tried to calm him down. Finally, Patterson had enough. Mr. Blackwell, you have two choices. You can leave peacefully, or we can escort you out for disturbing the peace. Your choice. You can't throw me out of my own club. It's not your club, sir. You're a member, and right now you're violating the code of conduct. The club has the right to ask you to leave. The floor manager, emboldened by police presence, nodded. Mr. Blackwell, I'm going to have to ask you to leave for the evening. Blackwell looked around at the other diners, all watching him with a mixture of shock and disapproval. His guests were actively avoiding eye contact now. He'd humiliated himself, and somewhere in his drunk, angry mind, he realized it. Fine, he spat. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. You, he pointed at Grace, you're going to regret this. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to make sure you never work in this town again. Grace looked at him calmly. I've faced enemy combatants in war zones, Mr. Blackwell. Your threats don't scare me. We'll see about that, Blackwell said. He threw several $100 bills on the table, more than enough to cover the bill and the disruption, and stormed out, his guests trailing awkwardly behind him. After he left, the restaurant slowly returned to normal. Other diners went back to their meals, though several sent over compliments and extra tips for Grace and Amy. Rodriguez approached Grace privately. That took guts, she said. Standing up to a guy like Blackwell. Most people wouldn't. Most people aren't trained to handle situations like that, Grace said. Still. He's going to come after you. Men like him don't like being embarrassed, especially in public. He'll use his money and connections to make your life difficult. Let him try, Grace said. But even as she said it, Grace knew Rodriguez was right. She'd just made a very powerful enemy. And that enemy wasn't going to let this go. What Grace didn't know was that Richard Blackwell III was already planning his revenge. And it would come from a direction she never expected. Grace showed up for her next shift at the Lakeside Country Club 3 days later, expecting some fallout but hoping the incident had blown over. She was wrong. The floor manager met her at the staff entrance, his face apologetic but firm. Grace, I need to talk to you in my office. She followed him down the narrow hallway to his cramped office. Amy was already there, looking like she'd been crying. What's going on? Grace asked. The manager, his name was Tom Hendricks, sat down heavily at his desk. I'm sorry, Grace. Really sorry. But I have to let you both go. What? Grace said. Because of Blackwell. The board called an emergency meeting yesterday. Blackwell demanded that both of you be fired, and he threatened to pull his investment and encourage other members to leave if we didn't comply. The board voted to terminate both of you, effective immediately. That's wrongful termination, Grace said. We stopped a harassment situation. Amy was the victim. I know, Tom said miserably. But Blackwell hired a lawyer. The lawyer sent a letter claiming that you assaulted him, and that keeping you employed creates a liability for the club. The board got scared. I argued against it, but I was outvoted. So we're fired for doing the right thing, Amy said, her voice breaking. I can give you both excellent references, Tom offered. And I'll make sure you get your final paychecks plus severance. We don't qualify for severance, Grace said. We're both part-time. Tom winced. I'm really sorry. If it were up to me. It's not your fault, Grace said, though she felt anger burning in her chest. Blackwell's the one doing this. After they left Tom's office, Amy was openly sobbing. I need this job. I'm barely making rent as it is. And now Blackwell's going to make sure I can't get hired anywhere else. Everyone knows everyone in this town. No, he won't, Grace said firmly. Amy, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. You were assaulted, and you stood up for yourself. Don't let him make you feel like this is your fault. But it is my fault. If I'd just laughed off his gross comments, if I'd ignored him grabbing me. Then he would have kept doing it, Grace interrupted. To you, to other servers, to anyone he thought he could bully. You did the right thing. We both did. The right thing just cost me my job, Amy said bitterly. Grace understood Amy's frustration. But she also knew that backing down to men like Blackwell only made them worse. Do you have another job? Family who can help you? Amy shook her head. My parents are back in California. I moved here for school, and I've been on my own since. This job was how I paid for everything. I don't know what I'm going to do. Grace thought for a moment. Give me your number. I'm going to make some calls. I know people who might be hiring. People who won't care that Richard Blackwell wants me blacklisted. People who don't care what Richard Blackwell wants, Grace corrected. They exchanged numbers, and Grace drove Amy home to her small apartment. Then Grace went to her parents' house, a modest home in a middle-class neighborhood, nothing like the mansions near the country club. Her father, Robert Mitchell, was in his armchair by the window, oxygen tank beside him. He'd been a firefighter for 35 years before lung disease forced him to retire. Her mother, Linda, was in the kitchen making dinner. You're home early, Linda called out. I thought you worked until 9 tonight. Change of plans, Grace said, sitting down across from her father. I got fired. Robert looked up sharply. What happened? Grace explained the situation, Blackwell harassing Amy, Grace intervening, the police being called, and now the termination. Robert shook his head. Blackwell. I remember that name. He bought up the Riverside Gardens apartments about 5 years ago. Evicted all the tenants, most of them elderly, living on fixed incomes, so he could tear down the building and put up luxury condos. Real piece of work. Sounds like him, Grace said. Linda came in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. So what are you going to do? I'm going to make sure Amy Chen is okay first. Then I'm going to figure out my next move. You could sue for wrongful termination, Robert suggested. With what money? Grace asked. Lawyers are expensive, and Blackwell has way more resources than I do. He'd drag it out for years. So he just wins? Linda asked, anger in her voice. He harasses a young woman, gets you both fired, and faces no consequences. I didn't say that, Grace replied, her tone thoughtful. I just said I'm not going to fight him in court. There are other ways to handle bullies. Robert studied his daughter's face. He'd been worried when she left the Navy, worried she'd struggle to adjust, that she'd miss the action and purpose of military life. But right now, he saw something familiar in her eyes. The same look she'd had before dangerous missions, when she was planning and strategizing. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking that men like Blackwell get away with this stuff because people are afraid to stand up to them. He's used to throwing his money and influence around, and people just fold. But I'm not most people. Grace, be careful, Linda warned. Rich powerful men can be dangerous when they feel threatened. I know, Mom. But that young woman is terrified and unemployed because I helped her. I can't just walk away from that. Over the next few days, Grace learned more about Richard Blackwell III than she'd ever wanted to know. She talked to former employees, people he'd fired or forced out. She researched his business dealings, his lawsuits, his reputation. What she found was a pattern of abuse and exploitation that had been going on for years. Blackwell owned multiple properties around Riverside and the surrounding areas. He'd made his fortune buying up affordable housing, evicting long-term tenants, and either demolishing the buildings for luxury developments or renovating them into high-end rentals that the original residents couldn't afford. But it wasn't just business practices that were problematic. Grace found multiple harassment complaints from women who'd worked for him, secretaries, servers at restaurants he frequented, women in his real estate office. Most had been quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. A few had gone nowhere because the women had been too afraid to follow through. Blackwell had also been involved in several lawsuits related to discrimination in housing, refusing to rent to families with children, to people of color, to anyone he deemed undesirable. He'd paid fines, but they were pocket change to him. Just the cost of doing business. The more Grace learned, the angrier she became. This wasn't just about her and Amy anymore. This was about a system that protected wealthy bullies and punished the vulnerable people who stood up to them. She was sitting at her father's kitchen table, going through public records on her laptop, when her phone rang. It was Amy. Grace. Something happened. Amy's voice was shaking. What's wrong? I got a call from my landlord. He said he's evicting me. Gave me 30 days to move out. Grace felt her jaw tighten. Did he say why? He said I was being disruptive, causing problems. But I haven't done anything. I've been a model tenant for 2 years. This is Blackwell, isn't it? He's doing this. Probably, Grace said. Who's your landlord? Some property management company. Riverside Property Group. Grace quickly searched the name. Her suspicions were confirmed. Riverside Property Group was one of Blackwell's companies. He owns your building, Grace said. Amy made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Of course he does. He's going to ruin my life because I wouldn't let him grope me. This is insane. Amy, listen to me. Do not move out. That eviction is illegal retaliation, and we can fight it. Fight it with what? I can't afford a lawyer. You won't need one. I'm going to handle this. Grace, you can't. I can, and I will. Don't respond to your landlord yet. Don't sign anything. Just sit tight and let me work on this. After hanging up, Grace made a call to someone she'd served with in the Navy, a legal officer named Captain Jennifer Hayes, now retired and practicing law in Boston. Grace Mitchell. Jennifer said warmly when she answered. I heard you'd left the service. How are you? I've been better, Grace admitted. She explained the situation, all of it. Jennifer listened without interrupting. When Grace finished, there was a long pause. This Blackwell guy sounds like a real prince, Jennifer said dryly. And yes, that eviction is absolutely retaliatory and illegal. But Grace, if you go after a guy like this, he's going to fight back hard. Are you ready for that? I've been fighting my whole adult life, Grace said. I can handle one wealthy bully. It's not just him. It's his lawyers, his connections, his money. He'll try to bury you in legal fees, drag things out, make your life hell. Let him try. Jennifer sighed. You always were stubborn. Okay, I'll do it pro bono, for you and Amy. But I need you to document everything. Every interaction with Blackwell, every threat, every act of retaliation. We're going to need evidence. I can do that. And Grace? Watch your back. Guys like Blackwell don't just fight in court. They fight dirty. Grace thanked Jennifer and hung up. Her father had been listening from the living room. You sure about this? Robert asked. Positive, Grace said. This could get messy. I've dealt with messy before. Robert smiled slightly. That's my girl. Your mother and I didn't raise you to back down from bullies. But things were about to get much messier than any of them anticipated. Because Richard Blackwell III wasn't just vindictive, he was connected. And he was about to use those connections in ways that would test Grace's resolve like never before. The next morning, Grace woke to find 2 police cars parked in front of her parents' house. Grace walked out of her parents' house to find officers Patterson and Rodriguez standing on the sidewalk, along with 2 other officers she didn't recognize. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. Patterson said, his tone formal and uncomfortable. That's me, Grace said. What's going on? We have a warrant for your arrest, Rodriguez said, holding up a document. Richard Blackwell has filed assault charges against you. We need you to come with us to the station. Grace felt her father come up behind her. This is ridiculous, Robert said. She was defending someone from harassment. Sir, Please step back, one of the other officers said. Grace put a hand on her father's arm. It's okay, Dad. This is just Blackwell playing games. She looked at Patterson. Am I being arrested or just brought in for questioning? Arrested, Patterson said, clearly unhappy about it. The DA's office issued the warrant based on Blackwell's complaint and witness statements from his guests at the country club. Witness statements from his friends, you mean, Grace said. The people who have financial relationships with him. That's for the courts to decide, Patterson said. Ma'am, I need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back. Grace complied, staying calm even as anger burned through her. She'd been in worse situations than this. But she couldn't help noticing the neighbors watching from their windows, the humiliation of being arrested in front of her parents' home. They cuffed her, gently, out of respect for her service, and drove her to the Riverside police station. She was processed, fingerprinted, photographed. The whole experience was designed to be degrading, and it worked. But Grace had been through worse. She kept her composure, answered questions politely, and gave nothing away. After several hours in a holding cell, Jennifer Hayes arrived. She'd driven from Boston the moment Grace called her. They're charging you with assault, Jennifer explained in the private interview room. Class A misdemeanor. Blackwell's claiming you attacked him without provocation, and he has 3 witnesses backing his story. 3 of his business associates lying to protect their money, Grace said. The police officers who responded know what really happened. And they'll testify to that if this goes to trial. But Grace, Blackwell's not just doing this to hurt you. He's doing it to send a message to Amy and anyone else who might stand up to him. He's showing that he can use the legal system as a weapon. So what do? We fight. But we also need to be strategic. Blackwell wants you to be so focused on defending yourself that you can't help Amy with her eviction case. He's trying to overwhelm you with legal problems. Then we need to hit back, Grace said. Not just defend, but counterattack. Jennifer leaned forward. What are you thinking? Blackwell's power comes from people being afraid of him. But what if we expose who he really is? All those harassment complaints, all those shady business deals, all those people he's hurt over the years. What if we make it public? That's a dangerous game, Jennifer warned. He could sue you for defamation. Only if what we say isn't true. And everything I've found is documented in public records, court filings, police reports. We're not making anything up, we're just connecting the dots. Jennifer thought for a moment. You'd need someone with media experience. A journalist who's willing to take on a powerful figure like Blackwell. I know someone, Grace said, thinking of her time in the Navy. A former military journalist. She does investigative work now for regional newspapers. Let me reach out. Grace was released on her own recognizance a few hours later. She'd have to appear in court in 3 weeks for an arraignment, but for now she was free to go. Her parents picked her up from the station. Linda was furious. This is outrageous. He's the one who should be arrested, not you. I know, Mom. But this is how men like Blackwell operate. They use the system to punish people who challenge them. So what are you going to do? Robert asked. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person Richard Blackwell really is. Grace contacted Maria Hernandez, a former Navy journalist she'd worked with years ago. Maria was now an investigative reporter for a regional newspaper chain that covered Connecticut and surrounding states. Grace Mitchell, Maria said when she answered. I heard you were back stateside. How are you? I've been better. Maria, I need your help with something. It's a story that needs to be told. Grace laid out everything, Blackwell's harassment of Amy, the assault charges against Grace, Amy's retaliatory eviction, and most importantly, the pattern of abuse and exploitation that Blackwell had engaged in for years. Maria listened carefully. This is good stuff. But I'll need more than just your word. I need documents, testimony from other victims, proof of the pattern. I can get you all of that, Grace said. I've been collecting information for days. And you understand that if we publish this, Blackwell will come after us? He'll sue the paper, he'll sue me personally, he'll try to destroy both of us. I'm counting on him trying, Grace said. Because every time he attacks, he shows more people who he really is. The more he fights, the more attention this gets. Maria was quiet for a moment. You've changed since the Navy. You used to avoid attention, keep your head down. That was before I saw what happens when good people stay quiet. I'm done being quiet. All right, Maria said. I'm in. Send me everything you have. Over the next 2 weeks, Grace and Maria worked together to build a comprehensive story about Richard Blackwell III. They interviewed former employees, former tenants, women who'd been harassed. They compiled documents showing Blackwell's pattern of buying affordable housing and evicting long-term residents. They found the settlements from harassment complaints, the discrimination lawsuits, the complaints to various regulatory agencies. Amy agreed to be interviewed, though she was terrified of retaliation. What more can he do to me, she said with bitter humor. He's already gotten me fired and evicted. He could sue you for defamation, Maria warned. Or try to. But if you're just telling your story truthfully, you're protected. Then I'll tell my story, Amy said. Other people need to know what he's like. The article was scheduled to run in 3 days. But 2 days before publication, Grace received a phone call that changed everything. It was from Blackwell himself. Ms. Mitchell, his voice was smooth, controlled, nothing like the drunk bully from the country club. I think we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, Grace said. Not even if I'm offering to drop all charges against you. Not even if I'm offering to pay Amy Chen 6 months' rent in a new apartment and give her an excellent reference for employment elsewhere. Grace went still. Why would you do that? Because I'm a reasonable man who made some mistakes after drinking too much. I was inappropriate with Ms. Chen, and I overreacted when you intervened. I'm willing to make amends, provided you stop this vendetta against me. It's not a vendetta. It's accountability. It's a hit piece, Blackwell corrected. A former Navy SEAL and a journalist conspiring to destroy my reputation. But I'm offering you a way out. Drop the story, apologize publicly, and I'll make everything go away. You and Ms. Chen can move on with your lives. And what about all the other people you've hurt? Do they get to move on too? I don't know what you're talking about, Blackwell said, his tone hardening. Those are just allegations from people looking for payouts. I've never been convicted of anything. Because you settled everything with NDAs and buried it with lawyers and money. Prove it, Blackwell challenged. Go ahead and publish your little article. My lawyers are already preparing defamation suits. We'll tie you up in court for years. We'll bankrupt you, your journalist friend, and the newspaper. Is that really what you want? What I want, Grace said slowly, is for you to face consequences for once in your life. And I'm willing to take whatever hits come my way to make that happen. Then you're a fool, Blackwell said. You have no idea what you're up against. Actually, I do, Grace said. I've faced enemies who wanted to kill me. You're just a bully in an expensive suit. You don't scare me. She hung up. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from barely controlled anger. Jennifer called an hour later. Grace, I just got served with papers. Blackwell's suing you for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He's asking for $2 million in damages. He called me. Tried to get me to back down. When I refused, he went straight to lawsuits. This is what he does, Jennifer said. He uses the legal system as a weapon. But here's the thing, we can use that against him. Every lawsuit, every aggressive action, every attempt to silence you just proves the pattern we're exposing. He's helping us make our case. The article published 2 days later, on a Sunday morning. It was titled, "Pattern of Abuse, How One Developer Uses Wealth and Intimidation to Silence Accusers." The article was devastating. Maria had woven together testimony from multiple victims, documents showing Blackwell's business practices, and a clear pattern of harassment and retaliation. She'd also included the recent incident at the country club, complete with statements from the police officers who'd responded. The response was immediate and explosive. Social media erupted. Local news stations picked up the story. Other women came forward with their own experiences with Blackwell. Former tenants shared stories of illegal evictions. Employees described workplace abuse. By Monday morning, the story had gone regional. By Tuesday, it was national news. Navy SEAL faces assault charges after defending Waitress from harassment. Grace woke up on Wednesday to find news vans parked outside her parents' house. Reporters wanted interviews. Advocacy groups wanted to support her. The story had taken on a life of its own. But Blackwell fought back hard. He held a press conference claiming he was the victim of a smear campaign. He produced his own witnesses who contradicted the allegations. He hired a PR firm to push back against the narrative. And he escalated his legal attacks. He sued Grace, Maria, the newspaper, and Amy. He filed ethics complaints against Jennifer. He contacted the Navy trying to damage Grace's reputation. But he'd made a critical mistake. He'd picked a fight with someone who didn't back down. Grace gave interviews calmly explaining what had happened. She presented documents, evidence, testimony. She remained composed even when reporters asked tough questions. And slowly, public opinion turned decisively against Blackwell. The more he fought, the worse he looked. His attempts to silence his accusers just brought more attention to their stories. On Thursday evening, Grace received a call from Officer Rodriguez. "I thought you should know," Rodriguez said. "The DA's office is dropping the assault charges against you. They said there's insufficient evidence, but between you and me, it's because of the public pressure. They don't want to be seen prosecuting a Navy SEAL who was defending a harassment victim." Grace felt relief wash through her. "Thank you for telling me. There's more." Several women have filed official harassment complaints against Blackwell. Real ones, not just civil suits. The DA is actually investigating him now. Your article opened the floodgates. After hanging up, Grace sat for a moment, processing what this meant. She'd won, or at least, she'd survived the first round. But she knew Blackwell wasn't done fighting. And she was right. Because 2 days later, something happened that would force Grace to make an impossible choice about how far she was willing to go for justice. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the original incident at the country club. Grace was at her parents' house, helping her father with his morning medication, when her phone rang. It was Amy, and she was hysterical. "Grace, you have to come. Please. He's here. He's at my apartment. The line cut off." Grace was already moving, grabbing her keys. "I'm calling 911, she told her parents. "Amy's in trouble." She dialed 911 as she ran to her car. "I need police at 247, Cedar Street, apartment 3B. A woman is in distress. Possible domestic situation." She didn't mention Blackwell's name, that might slow down the response. Grace broke every speed limit getting to Amy's apartment building. She arrived just as Amy was stumbling out the front door, her face red from crying, her hands shaking. "He's gone," Amy gasped. "He left when I called you." "But Grace, he was in my apartment. He somehow got a key. He was waiting for me when I got home from the grocery store." "Did he hurt you?" Grace asked, quickly checking Amy for injuries. "No. He just threatened me. Said I had one more chance to retract my statement, to say I lied about everything. He said if I don't, he'll make sure I never work again, never find housing, never have a life in this town. 2 police cars pulled up. Officers Rodriguez and Patterson got out, along with 2 other officers. "We got a call about a disturbance," Rodriguez said. Amy explained what had happened. The officers took notes, their expressions growing darker. "Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, witness intimidation," Patterson listed. "That's multiple felonies. We need to bring Blackwell in." But when they went to Blackwell's mansion in the wealthy part of town, he wasn't there. His lawyer called Rodriguez and said that Blackwell was at his vacation home in the Hamptons and had been there all morning. "That's impossible," Amy said. "I saw him. It was him." "I believe you," Rodriguez said. "But his lawyer is providing an alibi. This is going to be hard to prove." Grace felt her jaw tighten. Blackwell had been careful. He'd left no physical evidence, and now he had an alibi. It was Amy's word against his, and he had resources to fight that battle indefinitely. That evening, Grace received an email. No sender name, no subject line. Just a video attachment. She opened it on her laptop. The video showed Amy's apartment building. The time stamp showed that morning. And there, walking up to the building, was Richard Blackwell III. Someone had caught him on video. Grace immediately forwarded it to Rodriguez and to Jennifer. Then she called the number the email had come from, but it went straight to a generic voicemail. Rodriguez called her back within an hour. "Where did you get this?" "Anonymous email. Someone saw what was happening and recorded it. This changes everything. With this video, we can prove Blackwell was lying about being in the Hamptons. We can charge him." And they did. By Monday morning, an arrest warrant had been issued for Richard Blackwell III on charges of breaking and entering, criminal trespass, witness intimidation, and providing false information to police. But Blackwell didn't go quietly. His lawyers immediately filed motions to suppress the video evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally. They argued that charging their client with these crimes was prosecutorial overreach motivated by media attention. The case became a media circus. Every day brought new developments. More victims came forward. Blackwell's business partners started distancing themselves. Several properties he owned were placed under investigation for housing code violations. And through it all, Grace stood firm. She gave interviews explaining what Blackwell had done, not just to her and Amy, but to countless others over the years. She remained calm, factual, and credible, everything a prosecutor could want in a witness. The preliminary hearing came 6 weeks after the arrest. Grace, Amy, and several other victims sat in the courtroom gallery as Blackwell's lawyer argued for dismissal of all charges. But the judge wasn't buying it. "Mr. Blackwell, you have a pattern of using your wealth and influence to escape accountability. That pattern ends here. I'm binding all charges over for trial. Bail is set at $500,000, and you're ordered to have no contact with any of the alleged victims." Blackwell's face was purple with rage, but he said nothing. His lawyer posted bail, and Blackwell walked out of the courthouse to face a wall of reporters and protesters. The trial was scheduled for 4 months later. During that time, more evidence emerged. Former employees came forward with stories of workplace abuse. Tenants organized and filed a class action lawsuit over illegal evictions. The state attorney general opened an investigation into Blackwell's business practices. Grace watched it all unfold with a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. She'd wanted accountability, and she was getting it. But the process was draining: constant court appearances, media attention, threats from Blackwell's supporters. Through it all, Amy struggled. She'd found a new job and a new apartment, with help from Grace's network, but she was traumatized. She had nightmares about Blackwell breaking into her home. She jumped at sudden noises. Dr. Jennifer Lane, the same psychologist who'd helped Emma in the previous story, began working with Amy pro bono. "This is the cost of standing up," Amy said one day, sitting in Grace's parents' kitchen. "I know I did the right thing. But it's so hard." "I know," Grace said. "But Amy, look at what's happened. Blackwell is finally facing consequences. Other victims felt safe enough to come forward. You helped make that happen." "I just wanted him to let go of my wrist," Amy said quietly. "I never wanted any of this." "Neither did I," Grace admitted. "But here we are." The trial began on a cold January morning. The prosecution laid out a damning case, multiple victims testifying about harassment, financial records showing Blackwell's shady business practices, video and documentary evidence of his crimes. Grace testified on the third day. She described what she'd witnessed at the country club, how she'd intervened, and the retaliation that followed. Under cross-examination, Blackwell's lawyer tried to paint her as someone with a vendetta, someone using her military background to intimidate a civilian. "Isn't it true, Ms. Mitchell, that you used excessive force on my client? That you could have simply asked him to release Ms. Chen but instead chose to physically assault him?" "I did ask him to release her," Grace said calmly. "He refused. I used minimal force, a pressure point technique that caused no injury, to make him comply. That's exactly what I was trained to do, de-escalate situations using the least force necessary." "But you're trained in lethal force, aren't you? You're a Navy SEAL. You're trained to kill." "I'm trained to protect people," Grace corrected. "That's what I did that night. I protected Amy Chen from harassment and assault. If you're suggesting I should have let Mr. Blackwell continue restraining her against her will, then we have very different definitions of what's appropriate." The jury seemed to respond well to Grace's testimony. Several were nodding as she spoke. Amy testified the next day. She was nervous but clear. She described the harassment, Blackwell grabbing her wrist, Grace intervening. She described losing her job and being evicted. And she described Blackwell breaking into her apartment to threaten her. "Were you afraid?" the prosecutor asked. "Terrified," Amy said. "He's a powerful man who'd already cost me my job and my home. And now he was in my apartment, telling me that he could destroy my entire life if I didn't lie for him. Yes, I was afraid." The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty on all counts related to witness intimidation and breaking and entering. Hung jury on the harassment charges. Apparently some jurors felt that grabbing someone's wrist didn't rise to the level of assault. But it was enough. Blackwell was facing serious prison time. At sentencing, the judge was scathing. "Mr. Blackwell, you've spent years using your wealth and influence to escape accountability. You've harassed women, exploited tenants, and when people stood up to you, you used the legal system as a weapon to silence them. That pattern ends today. I'm sentencing you to 3 years in state prison on the witness intimidation charges, to run consecutively with 2 years for criminal trespass. 5 years total. I'm also ordering you to pay restitution to Ms. Chen and Ms. Mitchell for their legal fees and lost wages." Blackwell's face was white. His lawyer immediately announced plans to appeal, but the judge was unmoved. "Appeal all you want, Mr. Blackwell. But you'll be doing it from prison." After the sentencing, Grace and Amy stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and supporters. Women who'd been harassed by Blackwell thanked them. Advocacy groups praised their courage. "How does it feel to finally get justice?" a reporter asked Grace. Grace thought carefully before answering. "It feels necessary. Not satisfying, exactly, too much damage was done for that. But necessary. Necessary for Amy, for all of Blackwell's victims, and for everyone who's ever been told they can't stand up to wealthy powerful people. What's next for you?" Grace glanced at Amy, who was talking to another victim, both of them crying and hugging. "I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. Standing up for people who need help. I spent 14 years as a Navy SEAL protecting people overseas. Now I'm doing the same thing here at home, just in a different way. "And you, Ms. Chen," another reporter called out. "What's next for you?" Amy wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. "I'm going back to school. I'm going to finish my degree. And someday, I want to help other people who've been harassed or assaulted. I want to be like Grace, someone who stands up when it matters." In the weeks following the sentencing, things slowly returned to normal. The media attention faded. The protesters and reporters moved on to other stories. Grace found a new job, not as a server, but as a security consultant for a nonprofit that worked with domestic violence victims. Her military experience and recent very public stand against Blackwell made her uniquely qualified to help vulnerable people protect themselves. Amy finished her associate's degree and enrolled in a 4-year university to study social work. She volunteered at a women's shelter, using her own experience to help others. The Lakeside Country Club issued a public apology and implemented new policies to prevent harassment. Several board members who'd voted to fire Grace and Amy quietly resigned. And Richard Blackwell III served 3 years of his 5-year sentence before being released on parole. His real estate empire had collapsed during his incarceration. His business partners had abandoned him. His reputation was destroyed. 1 year after his release, Grace ran into him at a grocery store. He was thinner, older-looking, wearing ordinary clothes instead of expensive suits. He saw her and started to walk the other way. "Mr. Blackwell," Grace called out. He stopped but didn't turn around. "I just want you to know something," Grace said, walking up to him. "What happened to you wasn't personal revenge. It was accountability. You hurt people, and you faced consequences. That's how it should work." Blackwell turned to face her. His eyes were filled with bitterness. "You destroyed my life." "No," Grace said firmly. "You destroyed your own life by abusing people for years. I just made sure you couldn't keep doing it. Does that make you feel good? Knowing you ruined me?" "It makes me feel like I did the right thing," Grace said. "And I'd do it again. Every time." She walked away, leaving Blackwell standing alone in the grocery store aisle, a once powerful man now reduced to nothing by the consequences of his own actions. 5 years after that night at the country club, Grace Mitchell stood at a podium addressing a crowd of over 500 people. She'd been invited to speak at a conference on workplace harassment and the importance of bystander intervention. 5 years ago, she began, "I was a server at a country club. I saw a young woman being harassed by a wealthy customer. I intervened. And because I did, I got fired. I got arrested. I got sued. I became the target of a powerful man's revenge. But I also helped stop a predator. I helped give other victims the courage to come forward. And I helped prove that no one, no matter how wealthy or connected, is above accountability." In the audience, Amy Chen sat in the front row. She was now a licensed social worker, running her own support group for harassment victims. Beside her sat Maria Hernandez, the journalist who'd helped expose Blackwell. And behind them sat Grace's parents, Robert in a wheelchair now but still fighting, Linda beside him with tears of pride in her eyes. "People ask me if it was worth it," Grace continued. "Worth the stress, the legal battles, the threats, the cost. And my answer is always the same, yes. Because standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The rich bully thought he could use police and lawyers and money to silence us. He thought we'd back down, that we'd be too afraid to fight. He was wrong. And now he's in prison, and the people he hurt are healing and thriving. That's the lesson I want you to take from this: don't be afraid to stand up. Don't be afraid to intervene when you see injustice. Don't be afraid of powerful people who try to intimidate you into silence. Because the truth is, bullies, even rich ones, are cowards. And when you stand firm, when you refuse to back down, they crumble." The audience erupted in applause. Grace stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded by people wanting to thank her, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. But she made her way through the crowd to Amy, pulling her into a hug. "You did good up there," Amy said. "Mom would be proud." Grace smiled. Her mother had passed away 6 months ago, peacefully, surrounded by family. It had been hard, but Grace had been able to be there because she wasn't deployed overseas, wasn't in a war zone. She'd been home, where she was meant to be. "I miss her," Grace said. "Me too," Amy replied. Grace's parents had essentially adopted Amy over the years, treating her like a second daughter. As they left the conference together, Grace thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Navy SEAL to server to unlikely activist. From someone trained to fight enemies overseas to someone fighting injustice at home. She'd thought leaving the military meant leaving her purpose behind. But she'd found a new purpose, standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, showing others that courage wasn't just about combat, and proving that one person really could make a difference. The rich bully had called police to handcuff a man for saving a waitress, not knowing she was a Navy SEAL. And that mistake had cost him everything while costing Grace nothing that mattered. Because at the end of the day, Grace Mitchell still had her integrity. She still had her courage. She still had the respect of people who mattered. And she still had the knowledge that when faced with a choice between what was easy and what was right, she'd chosen right. Every single time.